Bring
There you
Out Your
go.
Geek is live. I'm Jeans, and I'm here with Kelly Toole.
Hi, everybody. At KELLYTHUL on Twitter.
We are going to talk some Walking Dead comics. We're going to do a short series of episodes just on the Walking Dead comics. First issue follows along the first episode of the show, actually.
Yeah, all the way. I mean, that was of these. It was kind of interesting now going back and comparing it to the show.
Yeah.
That this was the only one that I can think of that was basically the first episode of the show is the first issue of the comic, pretty much from start to finish in terms of that, which is kind of cool.
Right. So Rick has been shot and wakes up in the hospital, and it's abandoned, and he's the only person left, which is, I think, sort of bizarre. I love the fact that when he wakes up, he's completely freaked out by the fact that nobody's answering him, and he doesn't, and he gets dressed to investigate. He doesn't go walking out there with his butt hanging out in his, hospital nightgown. He actually gets dressed.
Which I'm thankful for. So.
I just thought that was sort of like an amusing little anecdote, because I don't know that many of us would have the forethought to go ahead and get dressed before we go out to find out where the nurse is. If you.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because it does show, so it's like, well, that's some forethought. That okay, no, but at the same point in time, as he gets out and he's like, what? Did everybody take a break at the same time? And even as he comes across the first couple of walkers, he's like, are you okay? he's like, boy, you relax, take it easy. It was like, well, you be careful there, guy. You're gonna get bit.
Yes. I thought it was sort of interesting that in the issue, he actually goes ahead and opens up the doors, and all of those zombies come out. And in the show, they have it chained up, and you just see like the fingers coming through, like trying to get out. So, because technically he like lets loose a horde, in the issue, in the comic.
Yeah, which was in the whole as Jeans and I chatted a little bit before we got started trying to figure out, okay, what's like the spoiler rules for all of this? And I think what we decided was like, there's no holds barred on the show. Anything that's aired on the show, we could talk about at any point in time, and then we'll kind of try and stay close to the, if we're talking about 1 through 10, we'll stick around. But the door, the dead inside door, you're right that in the comic, Rick unleashes a batch by doing that. Where in the TV show, the fingers came out, but
Right.
then they did a callback to that in the season finale of this year in the church when idiot father had gone out and brought a crew back, and they kind of went through. Eventually, they now have then tried to lock the zombies inside, and the church doors were buckling open, and you saw again that same kind of column of zombie fingers reaching out, which was kind of cool.
Right. Yes, because Gabriel. What did you call him? Father what?
Father idiot, father worthless.
Completely useless, I think, is a good name for it. Yeah, he really is.
He's not even a good priest, apparently, because he locked his congregation out. So
locked his to save his own skin, he locked his congregation out, and they wrote him effigies on the side of the church. Okay. So he tries to go home in the comic, and meets with Morgan and Dwayne. Dwayne, which I think is funny because Dwayne's a little kid, and Dwayne gets a beat on him and hits him in the back of the head with a shovel. It's a child.
Yeah.
He's a cop.
Yeah, they were apparently able to creep up with shovel in hand.
So, I really thought that was a nice little exchange, which of course they also had in the show between Morgan and Rick, and it's the first person he's come across Oh, you know what I wanted to mention really quick is the walker with the bike
Yes.
is not something that I think I have ever really understood. Um, I know he steals the bike from the walker,
Yes.
who's on the ground, sort of, in torso up, really more, I mean, I think there's actually like more to it in the comic. There's bones and stuff like, hips and things, but um, I, given the fact that he was already assaulted by one of these things in the hospital, and he's, like, I don't understand why he got so upset. Because he really seems to be sort of like emotionally, I don't know, connected to this biker walker.
Yes. Well, yeah, not non-walker. Biker, layer, buyer, biker.
Biker torso.
Yes.
um, he gets really, really upset when he steals the bike, and so much so that in issue 2, and in the show actually, he goes back and puts this poor thing out of its misery. Um, but it isn't, the first one that he's come across, so it just sort of, I don't know that I really ever quite understood that.
So my take on that was it was the I think if you go back the only one in this whole process that was afflicted with what's happened here but was really of no threat. I mean she
Hmm.
was of no threat, so she put him in no danger, and so in that case he could focus on, instead of, it's a little hard to feel sorry for something that's trying to eat you.
Right.
But in this case here, he just gets full realization of this is what, because I think in the TV show he says, I'm sorry this happened to you. I can't remember now.
Yeah, he like has a whole conversation
Yeah.
with her.
And so I think it's so my sense is because she was no threat, he was able to just kind of fully realize, well, this obviously the horror of what's happening to people, and then because he's fairly safe, he he kind of felt some empathy for her, but that's just kind of my guess.
That could be, yeah. She's he can feel sorry for her because she's not as much of a threat. She's just a growling torso.
Yes, great fan. Yeah.
So if he takes the bike to his house, he gets knocked out, meets Morgan. They spend some time together before they go and rob the station,
Yes, they do.
which I love. And I love the fact that at this point, Rick is still sort of congenial, like, nice to meet you. And he even cracks a joke, and then he's like, oh, that's in poor taste. I shouldn't be cracking jokes. This is really a horrible situation. And he just sort of like, playfully dangles the keys. Who wants to go shopping? Just sort of, he's still, he's a very different person than certainly than he is on the show now, or much later in the comic. It's just sort of it was fun to go back and visit this version of Rick that doesn't last very long.
No, it's pretty brief, but this is though. Hey, take the guns you want. And, hey, here's a car. Don't drive it too far. You're gonna have to give it back. This is also still Rick that thinks they're gonna come back. So.
Yeah, it just sort of, it was just it's very interesting to see the stark contrasts, and to visit it now after sort of knowing on the show where they go and things. I like that. So we move on from there, and Rick is going to go to Atlanta because that's where his wife Lori, her parents are. We all remember Lori from the show. And
pretty much as horrible in the comic.
She gets on my nerves no matter what form she's in. Um, so he wants to go to Atlanta. They live in Kentucky, which I did not remember at all. So that's sort of a little interesting tidbit. So he takes the car, runs out of gas, and steals a horse, which then like becomes his best friend.
Briefly.
Yeah, briefly. I love the fact that he's like talking to the horse, like having conversations about when Carl was born, and
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Rick has a lot of. I mean, he's talking to the biker girl. He's talking to the horse. I don't think Rick's got a lot of friends, and some of his
no.
friends he does have are not that great of friends. And I think actually as we keep going, this theme of Rick, I think, has friend issues comes up later too. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to talk about that.
Yeah, that man has some peculiar social skills.
Yeah. So he's from Kentucky. So sorry for
beautiful
anyone from
country,
Kentucky
lots of
listening. It
horses.
was just meant good fun. But so, and I'm not an equestrian, so I'm not 100% sure what horses eat, but horse food of some sort.
Hay, grass. Yeah, I mean.
So I don't know the timing here, but Rick's been in his coma for a couple weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
And this stuff's all. I mean, enough time for him to be out, and when he comes back, all hell's broken loose. And
right.
So I'm just trying to figure out how long that horse was in there.
Because I'm pretty sure he pulls the horse out of a stall too. Yeah, I thought about that too. I'm like, I wonder how gross that stall is.
Stall couldn't have been too good, and I got it, and I can't. In a stall, it didn't appear like there's a lot of ready food sources. If the horse was out in the field, I'd get it, but
right.
It kind of looked like he was in a stall. I was like,
right.
So I would have thought the second that horse came out of the barn, it'd be looking for some chow, but.
Right. Well, he did have a hard time getting it under control, so perhaps that's why.
Yeah.
It's manic from lack of food and standing in its own yuck for weeks.
For a long time.
Yeah, I gotta wonder about that. Okay. So he makes it to Atlanta and is set upon by a horde, which take to eating the horse.
Yes.
Rick loses his temporary best friend. This is our introduction to Glenn. Yay!
Yeah, I really liked how they introduced Glenn in the TV show, because that's when basically the same storyline happened, but Rick ended up crawling into a tank.
Right.
Which originally, there's no tank here in this verse. Eventually, we do see a tank in downtown Atlanta in the comic, but in the TV show, it showed up there, and he went inside there, and Glenn's first interaction with him was basically calling Rick an idiot, which I thought was kind of cool. But, yeah, it is cool to have Glenn, which is, the Glenn character is a very cool character, and he gets introduced here, which is awesome.
Yes, so he saves Rick's bacon, takes him up one building, and then they jump over an alley. Rick almost doesn't make it because he's wearing a very heavy backpack full of guns, and I think this diverges a little bit from the show, if I'm right, because I remember Glenn bringing Rick back to a group of people, whereas this time they actually leave Atlanta and go to the camp.
Because in the comic, apparently Glenn does all of his gathering.
Yeah.
He goes out and scavenges. He goes off and does it alone, and he's super awesome, just like in the TV show.
Yes.
But in the TV show, it was a cadre that had gone out there, including Andrea,
Merle,
my good buddy, up on the roof shooting zombies like you should, and T-Dog, and
T-Dog.
T-Dog was there, Grumpy Andrea. So
yes.
Yeah. But it was just Glenn and Rick this time.
Okay. So I wanted to just mention that I think that's one area that we start to see sort of divergence, and when they go back to camp, all of a sudden, yay! Rick's reunited with Lori and Carl, and they're a happy family with Shane standing by. And it's the last time when they first see Rick, it's the last time that Shane ever looks normal in the comic.
Yeah, well, and this kind of gets into it, and I think it actually, I'll mention when we get to the point in talking about it, but Kirkman changed artists.
Okay.
After issue, well, this is going to be tough not to say episode, after issue 6. So issues 1 through 6 were one artist who continued to do the covers up through like 25 or 26.
Okay.
She's 25 or 26, but he switched over where. But you're right. I mean, so they were 1 through 6. The characters were much more caricatures. They
Yes.
were almost alley-oop looking to a
Yeah.
certain degree in terms of style. I mean, they were true. Okay, and so lantern-jawed Shane, who then becomes grumpy lantern-jawed Shane, and Lori looked reminiscent to kind of a Betty or Veronica a little bit. I mean, hints of that. It wasn't quite realistic as much as,
Right.
as a graphic novel with
Well, I think the walkers were incredibly realistic, but the actual characters that have, sort of parts to play were much more caricatures. I agree. Yeah. But the zombies, yeah, they had some real. It was almost like they were drawn by two different people, because there's divergent is the word of the day. There's a divergence between the way that the zombies are drawn and the way that the people that are living are drawn.
Yeah, and there's one that really in this first group of excuse me, 10 issues, where there's like a panel that's a close-up of a zombie arm, and it's really detailed and really,
Yes.
but then 2 panels before there was Carl looking like one of the Katzenjammer kids. It just goes just kind of like, okay, this kind of head, I can shoot a gun. So
it's the last time that Shane doesn't look like he's the devil, and we meet a bunch of characters that have been hanging out at this camp. There is Alan and Donna, and their twins, Amy and Andrea, Dale, Carol and Sophia, and Jim, who I'm going to refer to as Meat from here on out.
consistent with the TV show.
Well, and and there's some differences here from the show as well. Whereas Carol's husband was actually in the show, treating her very poorly, and he's dead in the comic.
Yeah, and Billy and Ben are Alan and Donna's twins.
Those two,
Who are described as, they're Hellions, and you never really get a lot of evidence in the comic beyond a kind of repeated any character, yeah, they're Hellions, so you clearly establish that these kids are rambunctious, I guess, and they're little. I mean, they're age-wise, I think, so I'm going to guess Carl's a little bit older, but maybe by a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Sophia's there, but yeah, there's I think you still get hints in the comic that Carol's husband was probably in the comic was kind of like similar in characteristics to the gentleman in the television series. A gentleman is probably not the right term to use there, but idiot in the television series. But yeah, we didn't get to experience any of his. Oh, you women go wash clothes and those kinds of things. So
yeah, they did have a conversation about it, in which. There are a lot of really good things about this comic, a lot, and I really enjoy it, but there are bits and pieces that I tend to glaze over, and when they started having the conversation about laundry, I started to glaze over a little bit. And I get it, it's part of day-to-day life, you can't ignore it, they still have to do mundane tasks, but I was a little snorry.
Yeah, and I Jim, we don't get to know well, for things don't go well for him. Dale
Neat.
seems like pretty likable guy.
Dale is very true to the show as well, same sort of character. And on day 2, he warns Rick about Shane and his wife. Mm-hmm.
Also very consistent there.
Yes.
So talk to me about Don. I'd like to hear the jeans cut on Donna and Alan.
I don't like Donna at all. I think the thing that really rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm not sure, I have it somewhere in my notes, but somewhere in issues 1 through 10, we find out that Amy and Andrea actually live in the trailer with Dale, or in the RV, whatever that is. And she calls it unchristian and that type of stuff gets on my nerves very quickly. Judgy people bother me, and that clearly irritated me a lot. I did like, however, how she once Rick first joined their group, she sort of took Shane by the arm and she was like, "Come here, they have things to discuss. Let's go."
Mr. Crazy, time to go. Yeah. So she, yeah, 'cause I think she's smart in terms of kind of connecting some dots around
Yes.
what may. So I think that was a very intentional move, is to say this is segmentation that needs to happen at this point in time, or things are going to get really nasty. But she does appear to be a bit abrasive, pretty judgy. But it's not just confined to Dale and Amy there, but she has strongly held opinions on lots of things, and she's very free in offering it up in a usually fairly unpleasant way. But a little bit about some of the, well, why do the men do this when we should do that, those types of things. But so sometimes she makes some good points, sometimes she's probably nitpicking at stuff, but what's consistent is it's always very unpleasantly delivered. So she's got that going for her.
Well, she's got that going for her, and I'm pretty sure we can call her meat too, right? So.
Yeah. I think that'll be probably something we'll talk more next show. But
Mr. and Mrs. Meat. Sorry. Okay. No, actually, she bites it in issue 10.
Is it 10?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it's okay. You're right. So yeah.
But yeah, so it's good that we didn't have to deal with her for too long there.
I started to warm to her slightly. She got a little less judgy right before she died.
Right, it was literally the morning before she died.
Yeah.
She stopped making judgments.
It was like, which is great timing. I think if you're gonna, probably right before your death is a pretty good time to maybe square up a little bit.
I was like, oh, she's not so bad. Chomp. Well, so much for that. So then I think right after, I want to say it's like the second day, maybe the third day that Rick is in camp, we start to see some serious differences between Rick and Shane. And Rick doesn't believe that they're safe where they are and would like to move camp. Shane thinks they're going to get rescued, and so they start to kind of butt heads. And the beginning of that is obviously the fact that Rick has come in to Shane and Lori's relationship, and Shane doesn't care for that. And I think he's starts taking things out on Rick. Rick and Glenn decide that they want to go and get some ammo, so they're going to go to a gun shop in Atlanta. And this is where Rick gets the bright idea to go into the forest, find a zombie, and cover himself in zombie gook so that he smells like a zombie. Which I think is funny because Glenn cannot stop hurling.
Yeah. Which I think is a reasonable reaction.
I just love seeing it. They kind of like
Yeah. So and there was, and he also got sick in the television show as well once. So I think what we learn is you can do it more in the comic, and you also you shoot that differently in the comic than the television show. But yeah, it's I just so I guess it's kind of like the first peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Somebody eventually decided, well, let's try these together, and I guess it'll work. But there's a bigger risk to it. So this whole idea of, well, I expect if we cover ourselves with zombie guts, we'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's a hypothesis that I would have asked him to prove before I did it.
Yeah.
But Glenn's like, oh, okay, makes perfect sense to me.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
You're the cop. You should go. Let's go. And it does work. So they get to the gun store, they load up, and then they end up losing it because it starts raining on the way out of the gun store and washes off. Which they did do a little bit of that in the show as well. But again, I think Andrea and Merle, they were all still up in the rough.
Yeah, because they had Rick and because they were going back to get they're trying to go back to get Rick's bag of guns that he had dropped.
Right.
In the television series, and Merle and Andrea and the rest of the crew and T-Dog were waiting, and Merle and T-Dog were, probably playing Scrabble together, doing the friendly
Singing
thing together.
Kumbaya.
Yeah. Playing I Spy,
This is also in the comic where we see that uh, Shane and Lori have sort of an official breakup where she officially says, this was a mistake. We never should have done this. Let's pretend it didn't happen. And obviously then Shane is brewing. Issue number 5. I called this one Let's All Learn to Shoot, because that's the majority of it, is everybody learning to shoot, and Lori getting upset because Rick is teaching Carl to shoot. This is where Donna says it's unchristian of Andrea and Amy to live with Daryl. Because I miss him. And we get a little bit of more tension building between Rick and Shane when they go out to I guess break up firewood, or I'm not sure I understand what that manly little gathering was all about, but Shane sort of loses his cool. And then I started to glaze over because Lori had to talk about the beginning of her relationship with Rick, and I just sort of went.
It was a college party, and his brother Jeff. And it's like, well, she didn't say it was a boring story. I mean, in fact, she said,
and she was right.
But it's a boring story. She was very right, because it was.
And then everybody sits around the campfire and has a little discussion about what they used to be. Again, I kind of get lost here. I'm the thing is like I'm not normally this sort of short attention span when it comes to reading things. I'm usually pretty in tune, and I like the backstories and I like the details. In this, I just really have a hard time with it. I don't know why. Maybe I just want to get to the zombies. I don't know.
Well, Jim was a mime. I don't know if you remember that, but he was a circus mime.
He's a mechanic. Shush.
Well, it was something like, I knew it was an M word. That's right, mechanic, but
yeah,
but he might have done mime work as a hobby. Jim in a box, short.
See the box. So they have this nice little gathering around the fire where everybody tells their story about who they were before the apocalypse hit. Amy wanders off to go to the bathroom. When she comes back, she gets bitten. There's a struggle with a bunch of walkers. And Jim officially becomes meat.
Yes. And Lori. Lori of Never Teach Carl to Shoot Lori.
Yes. Good.
I don't need to be taught how to shoot Lori. Kind of tries to kill a zombie by fumbling a gun at it. Just like
yeah.
And so Carl steps up and takes care of business.
Yes, he does.
Like Carl does. Which, in the comic, a different is that Carl was less useful in the television show for a very long period of time.
True.
Where his primary responsibility was wandering away. Here, he starts, he gets busy really quick.
Yeah.
Takes out a zombie right here.
Thank you for watching our first Talking Walking Comics. We reviewed issues 1 through 5. I think that's going to be primarily our format from now on. We anticipated doing 1 through 10, but it ran like an hour and 6 minutes, and I just don't think anybody wants to watch us for an hour and 6 minutes straight. So, we are going to have another episode on bringoutyourgeek.com next week. Thanks for joining us.